What's up, Fredonia? You're listening to the Local Lowdown on WCVF 88.9 The Voice and WDVL 89.5 The Inferno. My name's Olivia. I'm your co-host, and I'm your field interview lead.
Hi, I'm Elena. I'm your other co-host, A&R lead, and executive producer.
And I'm Dylan, the production lead.
Yeah, awesome. Well, tonight's episode is brought to you by Fredonia Radio Systems in a group effort to promote and showcase the local scene here in Fredonia, as well as Western New York at large. Welcome to the last episode of the semester. This is the Local Lowdown.
To end this semester/season out, this week we have Jare Curtis. Welcome.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Would you like to introduce yourself and how you got your start in the music industry?
Oh, sure. Industry feels like a strong term.
Just get right into it.
Yeah, my name's Jare C. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the lead organizer and mutual aid director at the Lavender Room. I'm also the editor-in-chief and the program director at Lavender Press. I do concert photography stuff at lavcam_ on the internet. And I have a real girl job, but I probably won't talk about that today. I got started doing music stuff. I mean, I'm a yapper. It's a long story. Basically, the short version is that I used to go to a lot of like local punk stuff and like coffee house stuff growing up, and with my friends in high school and stuff, and was involved in stuff in church dab, and then I can't believe we just dabbed on this show. And then I needed to do something funny after I said church so nobody thought I was weird. And then well, that's like a thing in New England, is that all the punk stuff happens in church basements. So it's like not weird there, but it's weird everywhere else. And then so I did that, and then I went to school for theater, and then it kind of all came back around, and I started doing DIY and bands and Lav Room, and kind of all came together. So yeah.
Do you have a favorite band from back when you were younger that you loved going to see shows for?
Oh my God. I don't want to say, because I'm just like, I don't know who has allegations now, to be honest with you. You
So
can,
real.
Yeah, you can laugh at that, because it was just like a lot of crust punk dudes. It was like a lot of bands of people I was friends with. There was this one band, shout out to my friend Hunter, that he only did like 2 talent shows, and they did Kryptonite by 3 Doors Down both times, and they were really great. So I guess that's my answer. Shout out to Hunter, my king.
Shout out Hunter.
We were in unison on that.
One of the only people from back then that I still really liked. So Slay King.
That's awesome.
Yeah. What kind of whoa, my brain just farted.
You're good.
Live.
No, Slay.
What music did you grow up listening to?
That's such a great question. So okay, so it's interesting because my dad had like a big music thing, but he didn't like really share that with us that much. And so and my mom didn't play music in the car at all. So it was like NPR or silent. So yeah. Or like this one John Cougar Mellencamp CD. And I will, the one that has Small Town on it, and I will say just as like a quick thing, one of my favorite icebreakers to do with people is like, what's a song that triggers your fight or flight response? And for me, it's Small Town by John Cougar Mellencamp. And also American Pie by Don McLean.
Oh, that is literally what I was going to say.
Right, it's like,
that's the one song my mother is just like, this must be on every playlist, no
and
matter
it's like,
what.
can you tell that I was a queer person who grew up in a rural area? It's like basically what that's about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what was your so my dad really liked AC/DC, so that was on a lot. And then he had a really big phase when she was like coming up and kind of hit the peak of her career. She never really like fully plateaued. Like it was like she hit the peak and then she kind of just went away. It was Grace Potter and the Nocturnals. And that was my first concert when I was like 11 at the State Theater in Portland, Maine. But then I went to, his 3 big bands when I was a kid were Cake, Primus, and Tool. And so that was really had a lot to do. And then he gave us MP3 players and he had to put the music on it. So it was like, he loaded it with that stuff, but then mostly like Green Day and Weezer. So that was like what put me through it. And then when I started getting my own taste, started when I went to see Weezer with my dad when I was 15 and the Front Bottoms opened for them. Yeah. And it was on the Talon of the Hawk tour that they had been doing for 2 years at that point because it was before Back on Top came out. And so then I was like, I just like started writing down the names of all of the bands on people's t-shirts. And so that's how I got to modern baseball.
That's actually awesome.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
really
I was
cool.
like smart enough as like a 14 and a half, 15-year-old to be like, oh, word. So I like started writing that down, and that's how I found modern baseball. And then I found this blog called Sophie's Floorboard. Shout out Sophie's Floorboard, where they just like put all of this emo stuff from all over parts of the scene. And there's like, you know, like you can. That's how I found out about like Drive Like Jehu, but it's also how I found out about AJJ. So it was like, and that kind of really created my taste. And then all the dudes that I hung out with in high school were like stoner metal guys. So I listened to a lot of Ringworm and The Sword. And that was fun. And Baroness. I loved Baroness. And then I kind of just like, you know, branched out and figured stuff out. There was like a period of time where I was in like hanging out with all these dudes in this like really crappy house off of a lake and like listening to like a lot of stoner metal and like Electric Wizard, but I was also in select choir. So like we were doing like pentatonics covers at the same time. So and I was like in drama club and we were doing like the Addams Family musical. And so my iPod was cursed as heck.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That was like when I first started here, I was a music education major. So it was like every like violin solo that I had, plus like all of the emo music that I've been listening to since like childhood, a mess.
No, like my phone literally goes Paramore, Cole Porter. Like,
Yep.
Yeah.
so that's real.
Well, we kind of got into it a little bit already, but you have dabbled in a lot of different stuff between booking, photography, you've even been on the stage. But what was that initial inspiration to actually take part of it, more specifically within this Buffalo scene?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm just trying to like think what version, like not what version of the story, but like how many details.
Right.
Because it's like I could tell you about my whole life. You can read it on my Substack if you want. No, but so I graduated undergrad the first time with my BFA in acting in 2021, and then like was trying to figure out what I was going to do, and I was saving up money. And then I moved to New York City from my parents' house in Maine. And then was doing the audition circuit there for like commercials and like stage productions and stuff. And I wasn't booking anything. I was working at Starbucks. I hated it. I didn't want to be there. And I was like spending a lot of time with my friends, and music was like the respite. Like I've had friends in bands in college, in Rochester, but that was like at the time where like stuff in Rochester, there was the only place to play was the Book Jar. There wasn't a lot of places to go. And so, you know, it was like pretty DIY, but there even weren't a lot of DIY spots. And like where I went to school, I was kind of insulated from the other stuff. So I wasn't super involved in the scene there at that point. But my friends who I had met through doing music stuff were like the people that were also in New York City at the same time I was. Like we all went after college. And so those are the people that I found respite in. And like we just went to shows all the time, and like small bands, bigger artists. Cause like if you live in New York, it's expensive, but also you can see like basically anyone you want.
Right.
And that's like the coolest thing about it. And so like we did that. And then I was spending some time with some friends in Binghamton, and they were really involved in the scene there. So I started doing stuff with them, and then started like organizing shows and playing in shows with them. And we were just having a great time. And it really like brought the joy back into art. I wasn't enjoying it. The way that I was taught to approach creativity in theater school was very like, what was the phrase we used? It was like process versus product. And that whole idea where it's one or the other, it's not both, really, really messed with my head. And like the idea of art as a product to be sold, and like also like auditioning yourself as a piece of a product and trying to get someone to think that you can be a good piece of a product for them, took away all the stuff about theater that I loved. And whenever I was behind the table and directing and stuff, I loved it a lot more, because it was like you get to see how all the different talents of so many different people who don't maybe even know each other or in the same room as each other fall together to create the larger collaborative whole. And that just makes my OCD so happy. Like actual OCD, I'm not just saying that. And so like it just makes my brain feel smooth as heck, and like you can just drive right over that. And so part of it was just because of that, it just like once we were doing booking and stuff, I just like really found a groove with it, and was really enjoying like helping putting bills together, and then the community aspect of it. And it was all the stuff that I liked about theater, but it was not in that like super like hierarchical way that professional theater can be. And like nobody was trying to be anything for the most part. There's always like people who are doing gatekeepy posy stuff, but really people were just being who they wanted to be at that scene in Binghamton, and it was just a great place to be and spend time in, and that kind of really set me off onto this. So once we relocated to Buffalo, and in that band, and then we started playing gigs, and I just started to get a feel for the scene. And the show that really like made me realize what I wanted to do is, and this band comes up on the show all the time, I don't think you've had them yet, was I went to my first like DIY gig in Buffalo was for Muddle. And
we haven't had Muddle yet.
And they're all like that whole lineup, the lineup they have now, like they're all a bunch of my best friends. They're such sweet, wonderful people. They're great at what they do, and they rock. And like they're so great, and like and they're really great humans.
They've played in Fredonia once, and they need to play again.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Desperate.
They just get like gayer and gayer like every year, and more trans, which is like sick. So, but yeah,
we did have Zero again.
Yeah,
which is
they're great.
Many of
and that's
the
most
members.
that's most of them now. So, but they're great. They're great people. But I saw that show, and they were playing with. It was really funny. Like they were playing this band, Spud Boy, R.I.P. the GOAT.
Oh yeah.
But my friend Ash, who does this thing called Poorly Wrote Suicide Note now, I went to school with her in Rochester, and I didn't know that she was in this band. And I like show up to this gig, and she's there, and we're both trans now, and neither of us knew it, so we didn't know what to call each other, and it was like a very much like a Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man moment.
That's awesome.
Because we were like, you're, because we were both dressed in a way we were not dressed when we knew each other before. So we were like, huh? But it was great. And that was the first gig I went to in Buffalo. And I like, before I was just going to like stuff at like Good Bar and stuff. And I really didn't understand like the full breadth of the scene and the punk scene and like then the connections between everything. And it really just like kind of opened up what everything looked like. And now, 3.5 years later, I feel like I have a really good grasp on things and like, the way that things work in the DIY community here. And it's my favorite. I've been in a lot of music communities, and Buffalo is my favorite one. There's something so unique about the folks here with that connection to the Rust Belt, but also the connection to New York State. But also Toronto's right there too. So you still have like a major, like major art city right there. And so there's like so much influence, and it's such a unique thing. And I love it. And I feel so, I mean, I didn't grow up here, but I feel really connected to it in a way I didn't even feel connected to my scene growing up and to like my community growing up. And also a lot of it has to do with like I transitioned right when I like the first day I was ever out was the day I like fully out, 100% out in my life was the day I moved to Buffalo, New York. So it also just like very much does feel like where I'm from in a lot of ways. Yeah. Because like that's the person I am, and the person I was before then isn't as much who I am now. So. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
No, it's so interesting to hear about. I mean, as far as Buffalo shows, I feel like every time that I go to a show like with you, if I see you there, I'm like, this is gonna be a good show. Yeah. Like this is like sweet. I know I showed up to a good show, like the Gorilla Show Fair shows. Yeah. I see you there, and I'm like, I'm in for a treat.
And you got to interview those. Like, there's so many folks who like are doing, and that's the thing that I love about the community is that it is grassroots in the best ways, and like like people don't answer their DMs, but also and that's like the part of it, right? But like also like there's something about people who are making art for art's sake that will never not be the coolest thing ever, and there are people in the punk scene who act like doing DIY shows is their job, and it's and like a lot of those people, they're the coolest people ever. Like my pals Biff and Johnny from Science Man.
Love.
Biff
we've had Science Man on here, so shout out for sure.
Yeah, I love those guys, and they're very nice people, and like they run this stuff like it's their job, and they care about it very clearly, and it is their job in some ways, but also it's like they have the rest of their lives going on and stuff, and they're doing it because it's fun. And then there's people who like do it like it's their jobs, and they're like a jerk. Caught it. You're welcome, Dylan. But there's people that run it like it's their jobs, and they like can be condescending and act like they're better than you. And then there's people who like recognize that it's a community, and like money's a part of it because it has to be, but that's not the point. Yeah. And those are the best kinds of people. Yes. And so the folks in the punk scene, like Lucas and Adria, who do the Gorilla Chauffeur stuff, and like the folks, my friends over at Gags, Key and Aiden, who like make sure that artists are compensated. That's always something we're trying to do at Live Room too, is make sure that artists are compensated, make sure that people are able to get into the show at the same time, because ultimately like we keep us safe, and the people who are like, none of it works. You can't do any of it without everybody, right? You can't do it without the bookers. You can't do it without the venue. You can't do it without the crowd. You can't do it without the bands. You need all of those people to do their thing. And like, the only time when it's ever annoying is when like people have an ego or money's a part of it.
Exactly.
And that's just like necessary stuff. And so, yeah, I don't know how I got there, but
No, I loved it.
No,
though.
yeah.
I
I
really
loved
did
them.
love it.
And I really
like those
liked
people.
earlier your whole explanation between theater and like a scene, especially too, because like I don't know, I've just always like known and noticed something about like a hierarchy in that sense, where I feel like at least my experiences through like my own behind the scenes stuff within a music scene, it feels just so much more community based, and that people just care to hear each other's like perspectives and like what they've got to do, and like a booker might have to pay a certain amount because of said thing, and how everything is connected, and it just feels so much more connected and so much more community, where I've like through my experiences through theater, I've just, even though it still feels community based, there's definitely some sort of aspect to it. So I'm really glad you brought that perspective to it.
And they're both similar in the sense where like if especially on a DIY level, if money's your goal, you're probably bad at being a band.
Right.
Or you're probably bad at being a booker because you're doing it because you want to make money, and I'm sorry, this is not a way to make money. Do something else.
Yeah.
Right.
And so if you're doing it because you really like it, and because you're like getting better every day and every time that you do it, and you like the people that you're doing it with, and you like meeting new people, and it's a part of your life because you enjoy doing it, then you're going to be better at it. And anybody who prioritizes money, you can tell when a gig is where that's the priority, because it's probably worse. Or it's like trying to be something that it isn't, or whatever. And I'm talking about DIY stuff, but I mean, bigger stuff can apply to it too. And it's just like the folks who know who they are, and like even if they're growing, when they stay connected to that stuff, you can tell. It's why like a scene like Philly is so awesome, because like even if you're going to the biggest venues in Philly, they are just as connected to what's going on in the basements as anywhere else. And like that's like the only city that I really can think of at the top of my head that's really like that. And there's some really cool, awesome stuff going on in New York, but also there's some really stupid stuff going on in New York.
Yes.
And like it's just like more time that I spend in all of these different places, you can really get a sense for like what priorities are based on what kind of stuff you get to see. And there's always going to be awesome people doing awesome stuff wherever. But Buffalo is like, so many of these people, like there might be a lot of crust punks whose parents live in the suburbs, but with the exception of like that kind of thing, most of these people don't have like a whole lot of money anyway. And if you're like in a band, it's like because you got lucky enough to be able to have an instrument, and you like have dudes you like or people you're friends with, and you just like are kicking it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that energy is always going to be so much more interesting and so much more fun to me than like anything else, you know.
Yeah.
And that's just like what I think is so great about the Buffalo scene right now. And
absolutely.
it's been having a great, it's been a really cool few years. And like DIY always comes in waves. It does in every city and every community.
Yep.
And like as far as venues go, we're kind of on the backspin right now just because a lot of places have been closing. But there's also so many cool bands popping up. So it's like there's always like a level of symbiosis where like those really cool bands will want to play, and enough people who have connections to be able to try and start up a new venue will want to be able to have a place for them to play, and it'll snap back again. It's just how it works.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I got there, but
Yeah.
thanks for saying cool stuff to me.
Of course.
You mentioned a little bit earlier your booking. You book a lot of the shows through Lavender Room. Is that where you got your start in booking? It sounds like, did you start booking even before that?
Yeah, so I started booking just like I was in a band called Breakfast Beers, and we would book gigs.
Didn't
I did
they
not
play?
even realize that.
Yeah.
Yes, you
Didn't
played
they
a
play-
Halloween show at Main Street.
I did not play that gig. The rest of the band did.
I was about to
Okay.
say.
I was
That's
at a Halloween party that Bugcatcher was playing in their basement in Rochester that night.
Because
Because it was like a last second thing. But I did help
Yeah.
book that show, but I didn't play that show.
Got you.
And so like, and it was like, there was like, you know, like 13 of us. And like, I think we only ever played one show where everyone who was technically playing in that band ever did.
Wow.
Really?
Did not know that.
Yeah. And so like, it was like very much like a thing that was like friends of friends of friends playing together.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like
Right.
a college kind of thing. It was like always going to live in that moment. And I don't do that band anymore, but I love the memories, and also like it's so integral to where I got now, and I'm so grateful for those people for giving that to me, because it was also like the first artistic outlet where I was ever fully myself in. But yeah, I started booking stuff for that band, and like then kind of like greasing my wheels on the people that I used to know and the scenes and stuff and venues. And that was kind of how I started. The way that Lavender Room started was that I booked a Breakfast Beers show. It was the first Day Fest, which is our annual anniversary show. And it was on my birthday. It wasn't even called Lavender Room yet, but we did it in the basement of the house we were living in Buffalo. And did that with my friends in Bugcatcher, who I just mentioned in Rochester, and then another band that doesn't exist anymore. Well, it kind of does. It has a different name, but at the time they were called Moat. Now they're called Mother Horse. They played that, and then we played that show, and it was like super fun. And I was like, oh, what if we did this? And then that kind of turned into a venue. But we didn't have the first Lavender Room show until February. That was like a DJ thing, and it was great. And we're doing the third one of that. I can't say it because it has a swear word in it. But
if it's the title, you can say it. But if we have to, we can always.
I'll say the title of it. It's called My Valentine, and
I love that so much.
MKV3 is this February. And with a K. Yeah. So we're doing the third one. I didn't even name that. My friend Sage named that, I think. So shout out to you, Skenderton. But I did that show. We did that show, the first one of those that was like kind of like the first official Live Room gig. And then, things kind of went as they went. Like we were doing shows in our basement as that venue and was doing stuff there for a long time. And then, started booking tours for my own band and for other people's stuff. And so then it would just be like the Live Room Presents, and then started doing more and more of that kind of stuff. And now we're in a place where we're like only booking stuff out. Yeah. And we're doing most of our booking in Buffalo, but I do quite a bit of stuff in Rochester, some stuff in Binghamton. And I'm reaching out into New York City, and I keep trying to do stuff out here in Fred too. But I'm also trying to like do stuff in like Lockport and like Medina and stuff, because the thing is that there's queer people who like music everywhere.
Right.
It's just like you have to rethink about how to keep it safe for them, but like they also deserve to get to not have to drive 2 hours to be able to go do a cool thing.
Exactly.
So like it's just trying to figure out how we can make that kind of stuff work. And the mission has always kind of come from that same place of just like trying to connect people with meaningful experiences and a safe place to do them. So, but that's kind of like, to answer your question, like that's how I started doing booking. And like, that's a lot of my mindset is more based on trying to give folks the experiences that I didn't have and trying to avoid folks from having the bad experiences I did growing up.
Yeah.
Growing up in the punk scene in rural Maine, I saw a lot of drug use really young. I saw a lot of people in bad spots, a lot of people experiencing houselessness and domestic violence as a connection to that scene because there was a lot of broken people and, hurt people. And that like connected the art and the music to the socioeconomics and like identity of folks, those two things in my head. And it's always been connected in my head because that's life. And so that the connection between those two things is so like behind what I do with Lav Room and with Lav Press and everything else. And I think that it's important to name it. And so like that's like why I do what I do is just trying to find the way to make things better for folks and how can we all have a better scene. That's really but that's how I got started.
Yeah. So. As far as the shows, what's your process when you sit down and you have a show to book? What's your process?
Sorry. So it's like,
oh, you're good.
It depends. Cause typically, so there's a few different ways that we do it, and it's changed since we stopped doing stuff in the basement space specifically. But so there's a couple ways. There is a form so the Instagram is like the core of everything. Like everything we do is through Instagram.
Classic. Yep.
I had like a meeting with a bunch of like leaders of queer organizations in Buffalo this week. And like the thing I kept saying was like, I just need you all to understand no one uses Facebook anymore. Folks like who are like of the age range that most need resources from you are not people who are on Facebook that much.
Yeah.
And this doesn't mean that absolutely no one does. Like that's hyperbole, but like very few people do. And like I do miss Facebook event pages. Those were great. But like the rest of the stuff, not so much. But anyway, so yeah, it always starts on Instagram. There's a form. I haven't used it a lot recently, and I feel bad where artists can submit to stuff. If you're on there, I do check it. I haven't booked a lot of stuff from it because I've just since we've moved out of the basement, I've needed to book more locals, and a lot of the folks who submit are people from like Rochester and other places, or people who are just starting bands. And Live Room will always be a place for brand new artists. There's like literally no way that we could exist if it wasn't. But it is hard when you're like I'm trying to book tours and stuff to put folks who don't have a draw yet. That I can tell anyway, and so like that's a piece of it. But there's a form to submit, and if like even though I just said that, please submit because I'm looking at it more and more every time I'm booking a gig. So I can usually what will happen these days is like someone will be booking a tour, they'll reach out to me and they'll ask if like, hey, if you can help out. I'll listen to the stuff, see if it's a good fit, and then I'll try and find a venue for it, and then I'll try and book the rest of the bill around that. I try really hard to book shows that make sense as far as like vibe goes, but for me specifically is that like I think that punk is an ethos. I don't think that it is a genre, but I don't think that genre first makes any sense. I think that there are a lot of punk bands that are not punk at all. Like you can't be punk and have Trump supporters in your band. I'm sorry, but you can be punk and be like, you know, a singer songwriter, like indie artist with like dream pop elements, and you can be punk as hell. And so I think that it's really important to make that distinction. And so I focus very much on who are folks that make sense together on a bill, and what is music that makes sense together on a bill, and what's like the energy of the room we're trying to create, rather than like what is the like, because the experience for everyone involved, because Live Room is a mutual aid approach to show organizing, it's like the experience and the feeling of everyone involved is just as important as what you're actually listening to. And so we're trying to create that, like that Live Room experience is the thing that works about what we do and what makes it unique from other stuff. And so that's the thing I'm always pushing for. So I try to like do the stuff. You're juggling a lot of hats because you're trying to do the thing that makes business sense. You're also trying to do the thing that can help, because also Live Room does mutual aid organizing. So we're trying to raise money and funds for people who need them. So we need to try and be able to make the bottom dollar on that. We also need to be able to pay our bands out well, and the venue needs to get what they need. And we want to have a good experience, because ultimately I don't care about the money as long as everybody gets what they need at the end of the night. That's the only thing I care about. And like that we get enough that I can contribute something to a mutual aid cause while also having enough to be able to put into the next thing. The whole Live Room thing is that I know it's working when I don't make any money at all. That's like the whole point. Because that means that all of the funds were allocated to the right things in the right proportions in the right way, where everybody benefited. But yeah, so the process of that usually starts with the tour these days, and then I'll try and put local folks on it if there's bands that I just really think will be good together. I also think that anyone who books can kind of relate to, like, do you always have some kind of stew going on about, you'll see a band and you'll be like, they would be really cool with these people.
Yes.
And like, I'm working on a gig right now where it's like I won't say what, because I don't know how it's going to work out, but like I've worked it out with all of these folks in my head that I'm like, it would be really cool if we did this show at Amy's place with all of these bands, and then we did a vegan meat raffle for mutual aid. And like, I'm like, that would be really cool, and it would be cool because of these bands and because of the energy that they would have off of each other. And I literally like know the sequence I want the bands to play in, and I know what I want to call the show, and I haven't even booked them all yet. But like, and also like, I will say this, there's this really cool hardcore band in Buffalo called like Do Crime. And I just want to book them with like a bunch of like queer people I know and be able to call the show Be Gay, Do Crime. And so like, it's also just like stuff like that, you know? Or like, we'll do something for a holiday and then it's just like, who's a good fit. There's also like a roster of artists who like are very much at this point kind of synonymous with Live Room. That like, if we're doing a thing, they'll probably be on it. Dirty Dishes is one of those. Offbeat Degradations from Binghamton is one of those. They're on hiatus right now, but Rugrat Rehab is one of those. Like, just like bands of folks who like make a lot of sense within our Free Casino also like make sense within our ethos. I'm good friends with a lot of them. I just also, people love their music, and they just make, like, if we're doing a thing, they're perfect for it. The band I will say that exemplifies that for me is Georgie out of Rochester. They're my favorite live band. Sorry, everybody else. If you listen to them, you'll get it.
Yes.
And they're all like the coolest people, the loveliest humans, like some of my best friends in the whole world. I love them so much. And like, it's just, so like, that's kind of the thing, you know, I'm always trying to like create a good energy and a good vibe and a good experience, and that's kind of how I try to sell stuff for people to get there. And I hate that I have to call it that, but especially at this point where I'm in my more of a promoter era than I've ever been in. is that I don't have the same level of control that I used to, where the venue is my house and I run it.
Yeah.
And like I run it with my friends and we all like have say in how that works. It's just different now, where it's just like I'm booking shows at places for bands because they want to play. And then I'm also trying to still do the mutual aid thing on top of it. Right. And so that's just like, it's just a different kind of thing. And like, people who have done both with me have noticed that, and it's not even in a bad way, but it's just different. And so it also changes the way that I have to go about things, because now I'm beholden to a venue in a way I wasn't before. And I have good relationships with a lot of the venues in Buffalo, and they're usually they understand what I do and they value what I do and they like what we're doing, and they like our bills, they like who I book, and that helps a lot. But it's just, sometimes it's just hard just because money has to be a part of it for them.
Yeah.
And like, especially doing it at like places that have to be 21 plus when
Right.
I really want to be doing all ages shows all of the time is really hard. And so there's so much of a balancing act, and it's also the thing where like nobody knows I'm doing that. And so then if like anybody is like, well, why? I'm like, I totally get that you don't know how much of a pain in the butt it was for me to get this 4-band bill to make sense. Because also it always happens where like I book a thing 3 months out, it's fine, and then a week before I lose the venue or a band drops off.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and like stuff happens. It's cool. But it's like all of that comes onto me. I'm the person who has to fix the problem. And I'm also the person who's probably not making any money. And like, that's totally cool. That's the point. I organized it that way. But it just becomes part of it. So I hope that answers your question. It really
does.
It's different for me than it is for a lot of other people. As the other thing I want to make a point, like you could talk to other promoters because their goals are very different than mine. And so, like, if nobody's ever worked in this scene before, they've never, like, talked to a promoter before, I am the worst person to talk to first if you want to understand how it works. Because I'm not, like, most promoters, I used to say that I thought that they were the landlords of the music industry, and I still kind of do. And it's fine, but their job is to make money.
Yeah.
Their job is
Yeah.
to make money for everybody, including themselves. And my job, how I see it, is to make money for everybody except for myself, and to make the most money for people who don't have anything to do with the show, which is people who have mutual aid needs,
Yes.
families in Palestine and other places that need funds, and using the community space that we can create as a way to generate funds for them. So I am more beholden in my head to the people that I'm trying to get that mutual aid to, and to the community members who, like, a lot of them do come to our shows, but are coming to our gigs and are part of our community, than I am to the bands and to the venues. And I have a responsibility to them, but they're not the first person I think about. And other promoters, that's just not where they're at, because it's not what they do. So it like I said, it depends on who you are. But
Yeah. Do you have a current favorite, like a current dream lineup that you wish you could put together? And it doesn't have to be local. Obviously, it can be local, and it could be like super mixed.
Oh, sure. I mean, like, this is like, so I'll just say that, like, I want to put my band All Made Points on any of these bills. I would be so happy. And that's super selfish.
Yeah.
But it's like, if
But felt.
if I don't get a cut, I at least want to get to be on a bill. But that is all to say, I did get to do that. I will say, I did do one of the dream lineups when I got to play with Muddle.
That's awesome.
And Here's Collective with All Main Points, and then also with Jetsam and local band Forest Fire. That was an incredible show. Shout out to Gags. Shout out to Amos from the tour. I can't remember the name of the tour booking, but your name is Amos, and you were really kind to me in my emails. I have no idea what this person
You know
looks
who
like,
you
but
are.
Yeah. The Here's Collective folks, like, that is one of the biggest, that band and the ethos behind that band is so influential to everything I do, and I love them. So that was super sick that we got to do that. That was a dream come true. I would really like to do something with the band Fight on Sight. And also, I love Fight on Sight, and also like Offbeat Degradations, who I love and adore. I'd love to get them together. Slut Bomb from Ohio, who we worked with back in September under a bridge by a Tops, and that was incredible. This Pink and Black series that we've been working on is like one of my favorite things that I've gotten to do through Lav Room, and it's such a joy to get to do it and be in my community and make cool happen with my friends. Cool stuff. Sorry, Dylan. And so it's just like a really great time, and I enjoy doing it a lot. My dream bill is Georgie, Free Casino, Muddle, All Main Points, if I like that'll if there's ever like a last Lav Room gig, I imagine we'll all be 85 years old. It'd be really funny if all of these like leftist punk bands came together this one last time with all these old ass trans people and we just like did that. That'd be sick.
Just
sorry,
the
Dylan,
gray hair
but-
in the crowd alone.
Yeah, no, real. But like I just like I love those folks. Anytime I can put Georgie Muddle Free Casino on a bill, I will do it. And they all are in different places now, and so it's like so hard for me to do it. But the times that I've got to do it, they're always my favorite gigs. And I'm like, if y'all don't come to the Georgie Free Casino Muddle bill, you like clearly don't know what's cool and what's going on in the New York scene because like and you know those are not huge bands and they should be. They get a little bit bigger all the time, but and like you know. Jeff Rosenstock is my uncle. I love him. Not literally, but I do think he knows who I am at this point because I've been stalking him for years. But I love everything that he does. He's such an inspiration to me. If I could ever work with him at all, I would in a heartbeat. I love Sweet Pill. I love Bikini Kill, R.I.P.
Oh my gosh.
Probably R.I.P.
Yes.
I saw their
don't
last.
know for sure.
I saw their last tour, and apparently every show they were like, "This is the last tour, maybe."
Yeah.
Which is like when you're that old and you have the option, I get it. Because you're like, I'll tell you that it's the last time, and you'll come and you'll give me money, and then if it's enough money, and I don't feel like I'm gonna die afterwards because I'm in my 50s and touring is excruciating, then maybe I'll do it again. That makes sense.
Yeah,
to
we
me.
could always just
But-
run it back.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
We'll just sit this time.
Yeah, no, real.
Yeah.
But I love them. You know, there's a lot of bands. I feel like I'm blanking, but I really just love. I love contrasts. I love when stuff it makes sense in terms of like political energy or just like value systems, which is why like the thing I'm saying about like Georgie and Muddle, I feel like are two bands that you would think would make no sense together, and they so do. And I love any time that I get to put them together. And yeah, it's just really Georgie's the punkest folk band I know, and they're not folk punk at all. But it's just like anti-capitalism songs with a banjo to lull yourself to sleep to, and it's just like great. And so that's the kind of stuff that I really love. And if I can ever mash up vibes. The dream booking, like the dream booking of my life is if I can finally book Sister Wife Sex Strike in Buffalo. Like I really want to get them. They're like a 2-piece trans folk punk band that's like really having a moment right now. And folk punk also is like a big part of when I was growing up. I didn't even mention it. Like the metal scene and Midwest emo and folk punk were like the three things I really cut my teeth on.
Yes.
And the folk punk community has like embraced Lav Room so hard, and like all of those folks talk to each other. They always like, I'm so grateful they say nice things about us to each other, and then they always come back and work with us. That was a big way that we ended up being able to work with Kimya Dawson and was able to put a lot of money in the pockets of folks in Buffalo who needed it, which was so amazing that we got to do that because of that gig. And so that was just like a really great opportunity. You know, and so stuff like that, you know, there is a list of like bands that I made when I first started doing it, and every year I add to it, and it's so cool when I get to cross stuff off, and I've gotten to cross a lot of stuff off. I got it when we did the thing with Kimya, which I didn't. She was not on the list because I didn't think that could ever happen, and then it did. So she's added and then crossed off. But Proper was a band we got to work with. It was cool. Rat Bath was a band that I've liked for a long time. It wasn't officially a Lav Room show, but AMP played with them, so I'm going to count it. Vile was one that was so cool. Those are people I've admired for a long time, and getting to meet them and play with them was so great. But the big one is I would really, really, really love to work with Cheekface. Also, it's like almost happened a couple of times. It's felt like, but I say that. It like barely has almost happened. It's like they were like, yeah, maybe. And I was like, oh my God, guys, it's gonna happen. And then I was like talking to people who like knew them, and they're like, yeah, if we're in town, because they're like independent, so like it's like more possible than not. And again, after I booked Kimmy Dawson, I'm like, well, if I could do that, like nothing, not in the way where it's like I'm so cool I can do this, because I don't feel that way about it, but it's more like, well, if that happened, which is the craziest thing that could have happened, then I just don't believe that nothing can happen yet. Like Guns N' Roses might ask me to book a basement show for them.
Yeah.
To anyone who doesn't do this, you would think like, oh, it's like one guy telling you like, oh, I'm friends with this band, like maybe we can get them sometime, is not like constitute a booking. Sometimes it like literally does.
Yeah.
Like that's literally, and then it's like, it's like a week later, you're like doing a show in like the basement of an art gallery with someone you've been listening to since you were 6 because they were like on their way to a film festival and were like, oh, I could use a couple $100. Like that's literally how it works out a lot of the time. When if they're not like on any kind of touring label, or even if they are, but it's super DIY. And so like it's really hard sometimes to be able to manage your expectations when it's a bigger artist or an artist that you really like. And sometimes it could be an artist that like isn't even that big, but it's like big to you. Like I grew up listening to Hello Shark, and now I'm like buddies with Lincoln, who's the lead singer in that band, like the head of that band. It's his project. It's just based in Kittery, Maine, and like is like a slowcore project from Kittery, Maine, and he was the biggest deal to me when I was like 17. And like now it's just like a dude I know that I Instagram DM sometimes, you know. But like the first time we did that, I was like, guys, do you know who we got? We got Hello Shark. And people were like, that's cool. Who? And then they were like, oh, I think I got one of these songs in my Discover Weekly one time, you know? And so like, and that has a lot to do with how like swamped the industry is. That's like a whole other thing about like what music's like these days and streaming and everything else. But, you know, it's so hard to be able to mitigate those expectations when you're like really excited about booking a thing, you know? And especially like with, again, I'll circle back to like with what we do, where it's like we're trying to book artists mostly of marginalized communities. So like the goal with Lavrim is that we're booking folks who are queer, trans, BIPOC, disabled, women, all of the intersections in between and beyond that. And so like when you have the opportunity to be able like, if it's another like white trans femme person, that's awesome because I know a lot of other white trans femme people in Buffalo who would really benefit from that. But then when it's like, you know, like how many, you know, like black trans women artists are there that are going to come to Buffalo, New York, and then the people who are like of that identity or adjacent to it or identify with it, like get to see a person and an artist who either they knew or they didn't, either way, like get something from that. How many times does that happen? And so I get really excited when something like that gets to happen because it doesn't, like just because of where Buffalo's located as far as touring goes, like a lot of times they'll just go to Toronto instead or they'll go to New York City instead. And so like if you're going to come to Buffalo and then you ask to book a DIY thing because you know the specific thing we're trying to do, that's really exciting for me because it also means like not only do you want to book a show with us, but you get it. Like you get what we're trying to do and you think there's value in that and you want to follow up with that. And so then like also I want that kind of stuff for my community. So, and that's also part of why I just like, I very rarely say no to a booking, even though I probably should. Is because like, that's why there's such a high volume of Lavrim stuff and why we're trying to slow it down a little bit. It's just because I was saying yes to like everything because I just wanted to have as many folks from as many backgrounds, genres of music, scenes represented as possible because I wanted everybody to be able to get that thing. And I like doing it too. It's fun. And like my team liked doing it. We were all having fun doing it together and we still do. And like, it's great, but there's just a lot of components. So I don't know how we got there, but.
Fair. So Lavender Room has moved after 3 years from being a house venue to Milky's and Amy's Place. What's that like? What's that transition like?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it a little bit. It's been different, you know. And we're doing stuff other places too. And like, there's a lot of, I can't say a ton. There's like a lot of stuff that's like, I have ins places and kind of think I know where things are going. One, the hardest thing is just like, Amy's is, so this is like inside baseball for people. Amy's right now is like the only reliable all ages venue.
Really?
In Buffalo. And also like, they're not super public about it, but I don't think they have any problem with me saying it. Like, they're not a restaurant anymore. They're barely even a venue. They're kind of just booking with people that they've been booking with because they like doing it, but they're not really doing it as a business at this point. It's mostly volunteer stuff and keeping the space open because they own the building, which is a bummer for the scene. And it's also a bummer just because...
That is, yes. I've heard so much about Amy's
And the
Place.
volume is decreasing. And it doesn't look like it now because they've kept their books open and they're going to continue to. And the folks who run it are great people, and they love what they do, and they don't want to stop doing it. But it's just like, that's just where they're at. And so like, and that's the only all ages room, like reliably, the only one at this point, because a lot of other DIY spots have closed.
Also, a lot of them are like bar based as well.
That's the other part I was going to say. So like Milky's, I really love working with them. They're really nice people. They've been really great to us so far. There's like some, not even in a bad way, but just like the fact that like. Also, women-owned business with vegan food on the menu, vegan chicken parm, slay. Great.
That
Love it.
sounds so good right now.
No, it's like a great spot, and like check it out. They're really great people. They're super nice. And like I just did a show. I just played for my first All My Main Points show in a little bit over there recently. All My Points music on Instagram. Check us out. We're doing slowcore and screamo and post hardcore because I can't decide.
Shout out.
But yeah, thanks. But anyway, so we've been doing stuff at Milky's and it's been cool. But they're a bar, so their expectations are different. What they need is different. And so it's like the 21 plus thing. They are cool in the sense that they are like the only bar I've worked with that will do like 21 plus unless like accompanied by a parent or legal guardian, which is at least something. I think that's really funny if you're 20 years old and you have to be like, Mom, can you come with me to the punk show, please? But like, I get it. We're doing a really sick gig there this weekend. But by the time you listen to this, it will have already happened.
And it was awesome.
It was great, probably.
Great.
There was vegan chicken parm for all with my friend Adria's band Grilf and Fed Ash out of Binghamton and Bile Study, who this is their second show. They're so sick. Like Bible study, but puking. Heck yeah. But anyway, like, so we're doing that gig and it's a punk show and it's a different thing for them. I mean, they've been super cool and been like, Jare, like, we trust you, like, go for it. And I'm like, cool, we're going to have a mosh pit in the middle of your townie bar. And like, it'll be fun, you know? And like, they're cool. It's a really nice spot. It's like the nicest townie bar I have ever been to in my life. Honestly, like, and I say townie, non-derogatory, I am a townie. And so like, that's just like so much part of what they're doing, and I'm grateful for it. They've been really cool to us. But it's hard in the sense where it's just like a different thing. Like I said before, like we don't have as much control as we did before. And so much of what people have expectations with Lavender Room is super specific. And so especially initially when we started having to do spots at their places, including like Under a Bridge, is that people were expecting a 1-for-1 of a thing that they had already had before in the basement. It's just different environment, different ways of being. Who's in charge is different. If I'm running the show, sure, I'm running the show and my team is running the show. But whatever the venue yells at me from a window is what the venue yells at me from a window. You know what I mean? Or whatever.
Yeah,
exactly.
And like, I'm friends with all these folks and like, I'm friendly with the bookers and like the people like me and they're super, super nice people. Like genuinely, that's not just me saying it for the show. Like all of the folks that we've worked with since we've had to make this transition have been nothing but gracious and kind and understood what we were trying to do and supported it, even though like, I've told them, like, I know you're a business. My goal is not to make money. And they were like, cool, that's fine. As long as, like, we have the bar open and we can do our regular thing, we're chill with that. And I'm so grateful for that. But also, like, having the alcohol there does make it so that folks who are under 21 can't be there most of the time. And then also the other part that's hard is, like, for people in the straight edge community, my friends who are straight edge, just folks who are sober generally.
Right.
That's not an environment they want to be in necessarily. And so that also makes it harder for them. And so like, and that's just like part of community, right? Is that like so much about community is that everybody needs different things. It's part of the reason why I don't say the phrase safe space anymore. I say safer space because what's safe for you might be unsafe for me for a whole bunch of reasons that don't have anything to do with the people who are putting the thing together or the place where it is. Like I could have my own experiences that inform why I don't feel safe here physically, emotionally, mentally, etc. And so I do my best to cultivate safer places everywhere that we do a Lavrim gig. But I don't have full control over that anymore either. So it's just like you have to, you know, we've had a lot of those conversations. Part of the reason why I do stuff with Amy's and Milky's is because I go, most of the people who are going to be here are trans, and they're like, sick. A lot of the people who work here are queer and trans too. We got this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not. And so there are some places where I could book a show there. I'm not going to. And that's not personal, but it's just like for the thing that I'm trying to do, it's not, you know, the best move for our folks. Right.
Yeah.
The other thing that we've been doing a lot that I'm really excited about is we've been doing an open mic show that also has like free crafting and then like some local artist, usually a singer-songwriter that we're booking at Cafe Aroma in Elmwood Village. And that's the second Tuesday of every month. And that's all ages. And that can go as late as we want. It starts at like, you know, the sign up is at 7:30 and folks who are 19 and under get to sign up first. And then that can go until midnight if we wanted to. And there's coffee and alcohol and whatever, but it's like a space for everybody to be. And I love that. I think that's great. It's our Coffee House Night series, and it's a space for everybody to be able to create. You can be part of the audience. You can be a performer. You don't have to book ahead of time. You can. It's by donation, so it's like very much still within the same value system. But it, is it. What I'm trying to do is. Amy's and Milky's have been great in the sense where we've been able to take stuff we were already going to do and move it there. Mm-hmm. And now I'm like, okay, now that we've passed that phase of things, it's like, how do I do stuff that makes sense in the place that I'm doing it? So like this Cafe Roma open mic, they're already doing open mics there all the time. They want to be doing more open mics. They want to be doing more shows within that later time slot because they need to get people in the door to buy drinks because they're going to be able to justify being open until midnight, which they are anyway. I want a place for trans people to be able to read their poetry about, like, how much they love Discord or whatever they write their poems about.
Yeah,
right.
And so that's a symbiotic thing. We both have a need. We can help fill it. That makes sense. So that partnership works really well because, like, I recognize what their goals are. They know what my goals are. There's ways for us to do those things together. So that's kind of the way that I'm doing stuff in the future. That being said, if you have a basement and you're cool to trans people and you live in Buffalo or maybe even not Buffalo, Lavender Room NY on Instagram. Hit me up. Love you.
Yes. And
there's such a need for basements.
Always, literally.
Garage, a
but-
cool yard.
But for information's sake, I know Lavender Room, when you guys had the basement in particular, used to do shows quite frequently, like quite a few a month. But do you have like a specific schedule now that people who are listening or people who want to keep up that you can know?
No, totally. Thank you. Lavender Room NY on Instagram. Best way to do it. In the next few weeks, we're rolling out a whole new campaign of what 2025 is going to look like as far as organizing goes. So that it's much more streamlined, a lot more transparent, a lot easier to understand, a lot easier to get involved. We really want to get some new organizers and new volunteers this year, and kind of build a group of folks who can do this work where you're balancing the fun and the art and the silly and the queer community all at once. And that's something that we're really trying to do. And so you can, but all of the shows are on there. We post them as soon as we can. There's so many variables, but that's all to say that, and then you can just like, if you want to go to a show, you can just go to the show. If it's DM for address, you can DM, we'll give you the address. If you like have if you want to volunteer and you don't really know where to start, it's like literally like show up and I'll be like, hey, can you make sure that nobody like touches each other in a way that is non-consensual, and if you see it, you tell me, and then you get to go to the gig for free, and then you get to do the right thing anyway. So that's cool. So if you want to do something like that or like help collect door money or whatever, you can just send the flyer for the show you want to go to the account, like to Lavender Room, and be like, hey, I want to volunteer for this, and then I'll DM you back and we can talk about it. But it's really just trying to create a community space that's really direct, and it's DIY in the sense where it's like, you are a part of the thing. So when it says do it yourself, it's like we are all doing it together. We're all community made. I really believe that we are all entitled to a better world and that we have every right to try and create that. And I think that mutual aid organizing is part of it. And the mutuality in that is that, like, I recognize that it is a privilege for me to be able to be on this show with you right now and having this conversation 3 years after the time where I like did a show in my basement with my friends while I was really drunk on my birthday. And so part of that is recognizing that like the privilege in the life that I've gotten from my community comes from them recognizing my work and me recognizing them being a part of it. And so that relationship where it's all cyclical and it all goes around and we're all working on that together, that's how community works. And there will always be friction within that, right? Because human beings are messy. But at the end of the day, the way that it all works is that we are all giving each other the stuff that we need to keep going. And so that's how Lavender Room works too. And so like you go on Instagram, you see a gig, you go to the gig, you like the gig, you come some more times, maybe you help me sell some buttons so that we can pay the bands a little bit better. Then you're like, this is cool. And you meet some people from a show, and then you be in a band, and then you start playing Lav Room gigs, and then you start going on tour and playing other places, and then you meet other people, and then you send them back to Buffalo, and we book them. And that whole cycle starts again, right? And so when I'm talking about mutuality, I'm talking about mutuality. It's just like, how can we share finances, but also experiences with each other in a way that makes everything better? And we all benefit from that. And I think that is the kind of world that we are all born into and that we all deserve. And so if I get to be a part of it, that's a privilege that's been given to me by my community. And so, like, that is all to say, follow us on Instagram.
Yes.
And come to a show and get crazy with us. We're going to have some fun in the next few months. There's some cool stuff going on.
Well, I'm excited for it. But to transition a little bit, and it's good that you mentioned it.
Transition.
Yeah, there you go. But
Yeah, I get it. I can say it. You can't. One of my favorite things is times on podcasts where trans people say stuff to cis people they can't say back. Mal Blum has a really, 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 not to say you're cis necessarily, but just in general, one of the really, really, really great episodes of I only listened to the Mountain Goats is when Mal Blum is talking to John Darnielle and says the world transsexual, and John Darnielle clearly does not know what to do. And it's one of my favorite episodes ever. Also, the time on NPR Fresh Air where the host asked Laura Jane Grace like what her music was going to sound like now that her voice was going to change from hormones, and she was like, "It's not."
oh
Yeah. So anyway, sorry. Ask your question.
no, you're. Well, the transition point is actually all main points, so I'm going to shout that out again.
Transition.
Yes, but yeah. So you've done that as well as some other bands that you've mentioned. What has it been like going from the behind the scenes, quote unquote, to being on stage and just that experience overall?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I've done like stuff like that. Like I was on stage a lot with like in theater and stuff, and I hated it back then because I didn't like doing stuff that felt like I didn't like doing stuff where it felt like I was like performing and I felt like I was trying to get something from an audience and I wasn't giving anything back. And I know that's not true necessarily, and I know that's not like the experience of like all actors. But I do think that like it's like, sorry, I'm just trying to like find the way to. It's kind of a thing where it's just like I don't want to be a part of an artistic expression that is centered on just me. And with All Main Points, it was really kind of like an attempt to try and do the opposite of that, where it was trying to like honor the places that I've come from and the stuff that I've done and sharing that with my bandmates and with my friends and moving that forward in a way that felt like a natural progression, right? And so All Main Points, the name is like comes from like a sign if you're driving from New York to Maine. On the turnpike, there's a sign when you're like an hour out that says All Main Points so that you don't go to New Hampshire.
I was going to ask about the name,
yeah. Even though two of those ways don't go to Maine first, they go to New Hampshire first, if I remember correctly, which is also funny. But I mean, they end up there, but whatever. I don't plan highways.
They're so confusing. Anyway.
No,
Every
real?
time.
Yeah, real girl. But the thing is just that like it's kind of a thing where it was really like me kind of centering back. I have a disability called dyspraxia, which basically just means I don't have a whole lot of fine motor function. And so like I was taking guitar lessons for years and I never really got anywhere. I can kind of make my way through it on the piano, but I can really only do chords. And like I live and breathe music. I write about it. I think about it all the time. I book gigs all the time. I take pictures for it. Like it's everything I do when I'm not at work is somehow connected to music and to art. And so to not be able to participate in that was really hard for me for a really long time.
I could imagine.
Yeah. And like I grew up singing, but it's just different because that's like, I can't like, I guess you can sing a cappella, but it's really hard to like do that on your own. And I'm a really self-sufficient person. I like feeling like I am in control and that I have set my own abilities and that I'm doing stuff for myself and that I can make my own way. And something that AMP has been an expression in for me and also Lavroom is being like, you can rely on your community and it's also okay to not be able to do everything all the time and it's okay to be wrong. And that's been a learning experience for me the past 2 years. And so All Main Points is also kind of in like a transition point right now where I had a really great fun year last year and now stuff is changing again and there's been some lineup changes. And it's been myself and my very good friend Thea Coronis working together and just like figuring out where we're trying to go with our songwriting. And it's been really great to do together. And like, I love her so much. And we're doing that work with my friends, Sean and Giancarlo from Free Casino, Genzo, Buckcatcher, Two Cattle on the Moon, some other great projects. But we're working together and like trying to figure out what that new direction is going to be. And that has been really freeing in a sense where it's like, I'm taking all these poems that I've been writing and like turning them into songs that really feel connected to something new. And the songs I was writing before was a lot about who I was pre-transition, and the songs since then have been a lot more about who I am now and who I've been growing into, and also who I don't want to be, and then mirroring that off of stuff that Thea's been working on from her experiences, and guitar work and drum work that the other two have been doing, and like really finding where that comes in a flow. Where I'm also working with 3 people who are all from different parts of my life, and so that's been really cool. And then on stage when we do it, like do the band, it's anywhere between like coffee shop stuff where it's just like sitting around and being like, gee, listen to this cover of this thing. And then it's also like, you know, a lot of AMP shows, like I do 3 outfit changes and I'm like, most of the time I'm like in my underwear and a bra by the end of the set. And I'm like running out into the alley behind, like next to Amy's and being like, okay, I'm taking off this dress. Someone put another one over my head and then I'm going to run back out. And like, that's so much fun because it's like getting to combine Midwest emo and punk music with queer culture and queer community, which is so much about what my work is about doing too, is that recognizing like we all have different places where we come to art and to life from, and we all meet in somewhere in the middle regardless. And so doing that with any kind of intentionality is super fun, and I really enjoy doing it. And AMP has been a great, place to do that. And I've learned a lot, about myself and also about where I want to be as an artist versus where I want to be as a promoter and an organizer. And those are different things. And for a long time, I didn't know how to make that difference because I was viewing the booking as my art. And I was also, in some ways, and this is like the queer woman in me, is that it's like, so my value is intrinsically based on how well I can do things for other people. And for that to be my art form, for that to be my expression, it wasn't until the past few months where I really realized how like damaging that was for me and how it wasn't conducive to like making stuff that was actually like representative of who I really am. And so in getting to write more music and focusing more on the music side of stuff for myself has been a really great opening for that. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely.
AMP is kind of an amorphous thing, and I love that it is, and it will always sound different. So, but it's kind of just supposed to kind of reflect wherever the folks who are doing it. It's usually like me and whoever's around are doing it in the moment in time. Yeah. So.
And at the day, hearing that it's such a passion project from the songwriting to the performing is just like exactly what I want to hear as an audience member. Like it just makes me want to like get into it even more. That's awesome.
I really appreciate it.
Of course.
It's so fun.
And then something that you've stated is more of a hobby for yourself, but I think is really awesome is your photography.
Thanks.
I've seen you do it in person, like we mentioned at the shows we've seen you at. Yeah. But in general, it's really awesome. And I was curious to hear about if you've had any like really cool memories or like really cool experiences in that photography world, because that again is just like something a little bit different from the booking and a little bit different from the performing. It's just yet another thing that's unique to that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, can you tell me the question part of that again?
Of course. I know. I'm now starting to ramble a little bit.
No, you're so good.
Yeah, do you have any specific like memories or anything that was really cool that happened to you through photography?
I appreciate it.
Or was unique to photography?
Yeah, dude, like so much of it is just like trying not to get hit in the face and break my camera. Like it's like the most physical thing I do. I love doing it, especially like with the punk stuff. I'm curious to know what shows you guys have seen me do it at, because it like so
mainly Guerrilla Show Fair for myself anyway.
Word.
Yeah, and you capture. I love looking at your account. Like that's that. Oh, you said the word earlier.
I'm so sorry. It's at lavcam_.
Wow, thank you. Free plug.
Shouting out.
I feel like I'm on Hot Ones right now.
Where's the wing?
We do that at FRS.
Oh.
A version of it.
Well, book me anytime you want.
Yeah. Parasocial was the word.
Oh,
that
yeah.
like parasocial relationship where I'm seeing all these shows on your account and like you capture motion so well. Mm-hmm. Like I've taken photos at Mohawk Place for a band, and it was my first time ever doing it. And I don't know, I couldn't do it. And then I like look at yours and I'm like, wow.
Finding the moment.
I aspire.
Mohawk is a hard room to shoot
so
anyway.
Challenging.
And so that's part of it. I guess to start is that like it's the space that you're doing it in is so much part of it, and the band is part of it. And like, you know, I just started doing this in July. So I had, and I'd done it kind of growing up a little bit. Like I would borrow a camera from school type beat, like photography class,
Me
whatever.
borrowing the camera from here.
Yeah, right, exactly. And like when I was in high school, like I grew up in like a pretty rural-ish area, but we did have a few resources that went to some of the arts, which was great. And it was like, you know, like the photography class had like 5 Canon Rebels that you could take out, which was like sick. Yeah. And I always had one. And so I would go to gigs and I would shoot stuff and I would like post them on Facebook. But then when my mom found out I had Facebook, I deleted all those photos in a panic.
No.
And because I didn't want her to know who I was hanging with. So all of that stuff is gone forever, which sucks. I wish I had that. If I had a genie wish. But anyway, I appreciate what you say about motion because like, and it, like so much of it is a credit to the artist, but it's like so much more difficult than I ever thought it would be. And like I was actually just the other day like looking back at like even right when I first started, like I'm a lot better than I was when I started, both in terms of like knowing how to hit moments and knowing kind of like what to look for, and also just in editing afterwards, like knowing what to really try and focus on. But and it's also like just, and this is also by merit of like photography is one of those things where the barrier to entry is just financial. And so like I don't have the highest quality of stuff. And like, you know, one of the things with my camera is that I have an external flash, but it's not a great one. So I mostly use my internal flash still. And, you know, it flashes 3 times to focus before it actually takes a shot. And so I'm planning all of my shots probably 5 seconds ahead, unless it doesn't take, which it might not sometimes.
Right.
And it will just give me a busy signal because the charge hasn't, like, the flash hasn't recharged. And so, like, so much of it is instinct. And I can only say that it's because I watch, like, 3 shows a week at least. Like, I go to 3 shows a week.
Right.
Yeah.
If I'm organizing something or my friends are in something, it's so much a part of my life. So because I've done that, I know what to look for. And if you're somebody who's, like, trying to do it for the first time, like I was, like, a few months ago, it's so much just, like, figuring out what's going on and like knowing, like, one of the biggest tips I can give if I'm going into that mode is like to notice if you know a band's songs, it's great, but like take all of your best shots of a band on the second chorus of any song, because on the first chorus you figure out where the times where their mouths are going to be open and where the vowels are. And so then you can time your shots to get them on the vowels so they'll look like they're smiling and they won't be like, ooh. And like figuring out like where a singer chokes on the mic, and then like also like how someone plays guitar, like where they're dipping, where they're not, and then trying to frame shots where you can like kind of like frame their face, frame their instrument, and really like getting a sense of how that kind of works. That's been the stuff that's worked for me.
Yeah.
And then as far as motion goes, it's just like you're only as good as the people doing it. Mags from Muddle is one of my favorite people. They're so great at what they do, and like I've just seen enough Muddle sets to know when Maggie's going to hit something in a way that they haven't before, or also just like how they are going to hit something and what angle I want to try and hit it at, and like trying to like get everybody in a band, knowing what lenses to use and when. And so much of it is experimentation. And one of my favorite things about doing live cam has been like getting to write just about how I feel about bands that I like and how I feel about like the people, and like getting to share that perspective. I've been kind of approaching it more as a blog than as like photography itself, just because like I think so much about this stuff and I never get to talk about it. And so like I really like to be able to like also give people their flowers when they really deserve it. And like
and I love when photographers do that. I know another one in the Buffalo scene that does it is Brandon Naleski.
I knew you were going to say him. And if you do some of the more of these episodes, every show I've ever done, I've been like, you need to talk to Brandon, because Brandon has some stories. And Brandon was one of the people who really inspired me. Like when I started doing this, the folks whose work was really inspirational to me was my friend Sully, who does No More Zines out in Binghamton, who I love. And then Brandon's work, my friend Soph's work, which they started right before I did. And then also my friend Clyde Chemical Trails started right before I did too. And Clyde's crazy with it. Like they're like he's literally like dropping photos from the parking lot of Mighty Taco like 5 minutes after the gig ends. Like I'm not kidding. That's literally what he does. And I've literally like texted him and been like, bro, I literally haven't gotten home yet, and you've posted the entire gig.
Yes.
Like I'm not even in my driveway.
He just did a BJ show, and that was the exact case.
We were in the McDonald's drive-thru and we were like,
Oh, here they are.
Here's all the photos.
All right.
It's like, Clyde, does your SD card like export to your phone? Like, I don't even know how you do that.
It teleports
Yeah,
from
it's
the
crazy.
camera.
It's
crazy.
like a sneeze and it's there.
No,
Yeah.
it's so real. But like, I really appreciate what both of you had to say, because it's like the thing that I get to do that's part of all of like the show going stuff that feels like it's mostly for me, in the sense where I get to really like, I've never, because of my dyspraxia, I've never really been able to do visual art stuff. I've never, like, I used to draw all the time when I was a kid, and I can't really do it much these days, mostly because, one, I'm really critical of my work, but also just like my hands cramp so much that it's just really hard for me to be able to be consistent with stuff, and I like whatever. But with photography, I don't have as much of those problems. I do still cramp a little bit sometimes just from the claw of it all, but I love doing it, and
As you
it's
should.
something I still get to share with the band, and it's like, it's a cool like mutual exchange, and it's like, hey, like, let me into your show for free, and then you get stuff to promote the next show. And I never ask, but because I don't want anyone, art should not be free until we don't have capitalism. But while we have capitalism, art should not be free, because people should be paid for their work, and artwork is work. But also, it's like, I'm doing work too. So if we both recognize that and we're able to do that, and it's amicable and equitable for both of us, I love doing it. And it's just like a cool thing to get to be a part of the community. I think like if you're somebody who wants to be involved in this stuff on a level other than just going to things, I think doing photography is a great way, because the scene always needs photographers. Because a lot of the times the way that people get involved in stuff is knowing that it's happening and knowing that it looks cool. And then they're like, yo, if these still images are this sick, then what does that band sound like? And like, how crazy would it be to be in that pit in that moment?
Yeah.
And my favorite stuff I ever get to shoot is when I just get to like, I did this on Saturday at that killer show they did at Duende, that Swimming Faith put together. I literally
Yeah,
just
that
like,
we missed.
We
Yeah.
wanted to go so bad.
I just kept holding my camera over my head and just like falling into the pit and waiting to see what I got. And like, I do that a lot now too. And like, the best compliments I ever get after the shows is where people are like, you are brave and crazy. And I'm like, thank you. And they're like, I can't believe you haven't broken anything yet. I'm like, I have. I'm on my second zoom lens, and I've been doing this since July.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's like, for me, it's like worth it, because that's the hobby of all of what I do. Everything else is kind of turned into work in some way, and that's been like the real like hobby part. That's just like a thing where I get to hang out with my friends and take cool pics, and it's like the one thing I can't do an AMP show while I'm drunk, but I can take pictures while I am. So that's pretty sick. So yeah.
So we were talking about how to get more involved in the scene, and you said a great way to enter it is through photography. But say someone somewhere out there has a basement and they have a house full of people who are all down to do a show. How would you go about giving them advice on starting shows there?
It's tricky. Is the thing I'm going to say first. Oh, I just touched the mic. I'm sorry, Dylan.
It's
My
okay.
bad,
I did
dog.
too. I did too.
I've been tapping the table like OD. Like, I'm really sorry. Yeah. So like, I appreciate you. You're killing it in there. Yeah. To answer your actual question, so there's like several levels. So one thing I want to address just specifically is that in the like almost 3 years we were doing Lab Room at that location, we never had a really major safety concern. I feel very
that's
lucky.
good.
I feel very lucky in that way.
Yeah,
'Cause
we had a basement in Fredonia that I was working at, and there were some concerns.
Yeah, there was one grounded outlet in the entire place.
Yes.
And so we are very lucky that
With many SRT majors that knew what they were doing.
And that's and that's part of it. So there's like so many levels. The public safety part of it, where it's just like a bunch of people who are probably maybe not sober, who are maybe not in their best mindset on a weekend night in a sweaty basement with maybe only one exit. And then you add the part where we're like advertising it, that there's going to be a bunch of marginalized people in one place. So we were really lucky that we never had a major safety issue. We also were very specific and very careful about how we handled things, but it was also a learning process. We were a lot better at it towards the end than we were at the beginning. And that's true of anything you do, and so I want that to be really clear to anyone who's trying to start a space. I also want you to know that it can be way more casual than the way that we were doing stuff at Lab Room. I was doing stuff super intentionally, and like we were serving food, and we were like, booking like major
really good
touring
food.
bands. Thank you. I
Yes.
made most of it. So that's a huge compliment for me.
I remember a specific pasta that we had, and it was incredible.
Was it the American
There was
chop
zucchini
suey?
in it,
That was me.
I think.
Was there red sauce or
Yes.
like? Okay, then that was just like weeknight mom pasta. then.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
But it was good. It was so
I just
good.
made a lot of food that my mom made growing up for me, but vegan. Like that was really what I did.
As you should.
American chop suey, the New England working class classic. If you call it hamburger helper, I will find you.
Not to interrupt, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You can. I love to riff. You can ask my coworkers. But the real thing that I would really recommend is like just do it at first. If you're doing a show, do it kind of low key. Do it with bands so that are like as many people that you know. It could be like your brother's like sister's girlfriend or something. That's fine. But just like people that you kind of have some kind of connection to, so that there's some level of responsibility on people. 'Cause especially if you're doing it in a place that you live, you need to recognize the fact that people live there. And also like folks might not always be respectful of that. With Lav Room, because most of the people who were coming to gigs there were queer people or like, you know, bi girls' boyfriends. They were pretty respectful because they had to be. And so like we were very lucky in that we had really great crowds. But I've also been in spaces that aren't like that. I've been in places that are like that really got you.
It did.
That really got you.
Trying not to laugh
like
too hard.
no, you can like not to like toot my own horn. That got you, and I
Yeah.
need you all to know that
Yes,
I'm funny.
yes.
It got me too.
Oh, my coworkers are gonna look at this and they'll be like, "Girl, you would not stop for those poor people." But that is all to say, like, I just a big piece of all of it is just like making sure that you set the tone of what you want. And that you follow that. If you don't want it to be like a super high key party kind of thing, set the tone that way without being like, well, recognizing that might be what you're doing. And you just have to acknowledge the fact that that's the space you're entering. Check as far as practical stuff goes. What's your outlet situation? Where are you putting bands? How much power do they need? Do not do any hanging power. When I say that, don't let extension cords be free flowing. Don't plug extension cords into other extension cords. If it feels like a bad idea, Google it. You know, that kind of stuff. If you're not somebody who plays music, like if you don't know how much voltage an amp needs, ask somebody if they can plug their amp into the thing that you're going to try and make them do to plug it into before they have to do it. As far as like sound stuff goes, like just look up some basic stuff on speaker setup online. If you have PAs, if you don't, like I would suggest really trying to find someone you know who has a PA system of some kind and has a board you can borrow. It doesn't have to be your own. You don't have to put money in to invest in it. But if you're just trying to play stuff off of amps, you don't really have a show. You have a practice with a crowd. And so it's just like that kind of stuff. If you're really new to it and all you have is a space, find people who know how to help you and it will be a better thing for everyone involved. The best thing, the most valuable thing that a community has is information. And everybody has information that other people don't have. And if you share that information with each other, you will always learn something. Well, maybe not always, but you'll likely always learn something and it will also result in a better final product. And prioritize fun over anything else, except for safety, and it will be great. You can't be safe unless you're having fun, and you can't have fun unless you're being safe. And it'll be fine. So many people who have been like, Jared, do a show in my backyard, are then like really concerned. And I'm like, it'll be fine because of the thing that we're doing and we know how we're doing it. And we know who we're doing it for and we know why we're doing it. And if you know the who, what, the when, the why, the how, you're probably going to be okay. Have some folks, if you're trying to throw a show, have some of your friends like work the venue and just like make sure that people are okay. Check on people, make sure that people have water. One of the big things about Lav Room stuff is that we always make sure that there is a free access to water and a free access to earplugs, to ear protection, so that everybody their safety is prioritized. Also, if you set the tone by going, I want to make sure that you are safe, then other people will more than likely set the tone of making sure that other people who are there are safe. And so that's just like a really great way to approach that. And, you know, make sure that your musicians are taken care of. In like, you don't have to do the green M&Ms in their dressing room BS, but like just like ask what they need to do a good show because that's why you're doing it.
Right.
And if you don't have it, try and find it. Out of all of my tour nightmares was when I had to ask my drummer to play on a metal folding chair instead of a drum throne. So like, don't do that. But other than that, like, you're chilling, you know? So
Nice.
I think that's probably it. Like, it's there's guides and stuff online. There's zines about it. There's like a lot of stuff you can look up, do some research, but like, it's one of those things where you want to be intentional about it, but you also don't want to overthink it, because if you do, you'll never do it. You just have to recognize that you're giving a bunch of people your address, and then a bunch of drunk people are going to be in your house, and they're going to be loud. So like, you know, check with your neighbors, make sure they're cool with it, let them know when it's going to start, when it's going to end, invite them to the show for free. If you are like a college student and you live in an area with a lot of other college students, you're probably chilling. If you don't, talk to people around, know your neighbors anyway. We should all know our neighbors. Community is how we all survive the end time. So you should know your neighbors anyway. That'd be a great way to be like, hey, I'm doing a punk show in my basement. Do you want to come? Also, please don't call the cops. And like, you know, just focus on trying to make everything be as smooth as possible while also not, you know, going so hard on it that it stops being fun, because it's supposed to be fun. And just focus on the community, focus on making it a good time, and the rest of it will follow. Is really the kind of all of that summed up, I think.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we are now going to do our first switch over to the Prod A booth, and we are going to have a question from our
What up,
promotions
besties?
head.
Hi guys, it's Charlie.
Hi, Charlie.
Hi, Charlie.
Hi. Jare, my question for you is, what is your favorite piece of visual media ever? And if that's too hard, you can do top 3, but I'm talking anything. It could be a music video, it could be a painting, it could be a sculpture, whatever jumps into your mind right now.
The Muppet Movie 1979. I was like, before you were done asking the question, I already knew the answer to it. Everything I do, Jim Henson had something to do with it in some kind of roundabout way. The ethos of that entire production team is just like a dude and his friends doing like really crazy stuff with felt. And that was so sick. And like, they got to be rich because of it, which is also crazy because that doesn't happen now. And it was just like, they had like, watch like the defunct TV YouTube series on Jim Henson. You will learn so much, and you'll be like, oh my God, and you'll also cry and laugh, and it's beautiful. And it's like how he ran that troupe and what that company was is so much about like what I love about art and what I love about community. And everything I do is basically the Muppets plus being gay. Which like, also the Muppets are gay, but like, yeah, like that's all to say. Like,
I mean, if we're being for real right now.
yeah, and like, and the Muppets are punk. Like, I have a T-shirt that says the Muppets are punk, and then I also have like a lot
From
of
where? Where can I purchase?
loud mouth something. I'll show you. I'll send it to you.
Perfect.
It's from a few years ago, so I'm hoping it still exists. But like, I own the shirt, but I don't know if they still print them.
No, I
But
gotcha.
then like also, you know, Miss Piggy is the original drag queen. Frank Oz did her for years. He is a man. The person who currently does Miss Piggy for Disney is also a man. Miss Piggy is like genuinely, unironically, this is true. Miss Piggy is the first mainstream drag performer. Divine was never as mainstream as Miss Piggy, and RuPaul came after. Also, Miss Piggy, I guarantee you, has never fracked a day in her life. I stand on business with this. No, seriously, but I stand on business. I stand on business with this. Like, I think it's completely true. I think I'm correct. And not only do I think I'm correct, I am correct. The Muppets performed with Elton John, I think before he even came out. I could be wrong about that. But I'm pretty sure I'm correct about that. Like, no. Bestie slay forever. The best movie ever made that does not contain Muppets is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. That film is like so much about what I think about life and love is reflected in that film. And I watch it like every couple of years. And this is really interesting. I always watch it right before I experience a breakup that I do not initiate. Never intentionally. This has happened to me 4 times since I was 15 years old. Yes.
And you just have that feeling that you're like, I should watch this now.
Like,
and then it happens.
Yeah, and most of those times I didn't see it coming. And I was just like, okay, weird. And if you haven't seen that movie, I'm not going to spoil anything about it for you. It's like, if you've never heard of it, amazing. Crazy that you haven't heard of it. Go in blind. There's so many actors in it that you're like, they're in this? And they are eating up the scenery. And it is like, I love movies that you're like, wow, if this was a play, it would be really cool. My favorite kind of thing. Also, Chef with Jon Favreau, great. I love Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks: The Return is one of my favorite pieces of visual media. I don't know if it counts as visual media because it's a still image in a song, like in the music, but there's a YouTube video that's like, you encounter a caterpillar, and it is so that.
Can we have it inserted in the video?
Yeah, I can
right
send it.
now?
I'll send it to you.
I forgot Dylan's not in the chair right now. So,
Thank you, Dylan. No, you're doing
thumbs up,
great,
thumbs up.
everybody. You guys are doing great. I love the carpet on this table.
I love
Isn't
the
it so, like-
reassurance.
Me and her we're very good friends.
The sides I pick at sometimes.
Yeah, no, slay. Oh, so this was you. Cute. That's so cute.
Left my mark.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
real. You left your mark on the industry. I like stuff that's not gay on purpose, and I also love stuff that's gay on purpose. I like how increasingly queer Adventure Time becomes as you watch it. I've watched that show many times.
It really does.
Yes.
I also like the two shows I've watched the most in my life are Adventure Time and The Sopranos. I've watched The Sopranos 11 times all the way through since 2020.
I was watching Goodfellas last night, and I just
Wow.
realized that.
It's another one. There's a lot of overlap of actors in those two things too.
Yeah.
My
But-
huge show is Lost. I've watched Lost a lot,
I've
but
watched-
I grew up watching it though.
I've watched a lot of video essays about Lost. I don't know if I'll ever watch Lost.
That's okay.
But I know what Billiam thinks about Lost.
That's me
That's
with Big
awesome.
Brother. I watch video essays on
real,
Big Brother, but
real.
I don't think I've watched a full season.
Yeah.
I should, but
I hope that answers your question. I also think that the So Glow Tiny Desk is like lit. That's so cool.
Yes.
My favorite. This is the last thing I'll say. I just think about art and media all the time, and I have OCD and autism, so like they're both like lists of things I like to enjoy. But my favorite like music set of all time is Jeff Rosenstock and his band Death Rosenstock doing the last 5 songs off their 2016 album Worry in some dude's living room for this thing that used to exist called I think it was Little Elephant, where they would like play a set in this dude's living room, and then he would like record the thing direct to lathe vinyl and then like do copies of it in his living room and then sell it on the internet. And that set was like that stretch of 5 songs is one of the most influential pieces of music in my entire life. And I watched that set all the time, and I like took a poetry class when I got my BA in English, the second time I went to undergrad, and I like took a 200 level poetry class. So I'm like 25 years old, and there's like a bunch of 18-year-olds, and it's their first semester of college ever, and they're in a 200 level poetry class, and I'm like, you guys, I'm going to show you some Jeff Rosenstock lyrics. And they're all like, I just learned who Emily Dickinson was yesterday.
Yeah.
But I hope that answers your question. I could talk about that forever.
No, that was
Add me on
so
Letterboxd.
awesome. That was like
Thanks,
was my
bestie.
favorite answer ever. I love almost everything you mentioned. Like I love the Muppets. I love Twin Peaks. I love Jeff Rosenstock.
Period.
Like,
I
you're
didn't know you were a
amazing.
Twin Peaks fan. That's
I'm
awesome.
such a twin.
The-
I have the soundtrack of the first season on vinyl. And
As you
it's like,
should.
I
I
love
want
the
to
soundtrack.
watch it. So where do you watch it?
HBO Max.
Isn't it? There's like three or four
It's-
seasons, but I can only find the first
including the return. There were 2 seasons. The first season was arguably one of the best
And then the
seasons
second
of television
season-
ever. And then
Capitalism ruined it.
yes, basically the person who created the show, since the season was one of the
David
best
Lynch
seasons
himself.
to be ever made, so many people were like, you should make the show like this and this and this. And the guy was like, I don't want to do that. So he completely messed up the show on purpose and like trashed it basically because
And
of what
swooped
everyone
back in
said
at the
out of
end.
like, yeah.
I tried to save it before it got canceled, but it got canceled. So then it was like off the air for 25 years. And then Showtime was like, we'll give you a bunch of money to bring it back. And he was like, okay, but I get to make a 26-hour long feature film. And they were like, no. And he was like, okay, I'll make that, but then you can put credits in between different parts. And they were like, sure. And then they did that.
Yeah.
Yep. And so it's like,
What?
and all of the characters come back, and it's most of the same actors, and it's 25 years later.
Yes.
And it's sick. And
Yeah.
it's cool. One of my favorite things is that the Muppets, Twin Peaks, and Sopranos are all in their own way takedowns of toxic masculinity and the American dream.
Yeah.
And they all have different relationships with why those are good or bad things. And I think that's super cool. And also gay as heck. When I said I like stuff that's unintentionally queer, all three of those things I think are true because they're all created by straight people.
1,000%.
Yes. What did you think of that ending of The Sopranos?
I think it's
everyone
I think
talked
it's
to-
brilliant, and anybody who's like pissy about it is wrong. Sorry, like you just are. It's also like you have to. That didn't happen in a vacuum. You have to think about the time period in which it came out. It's like one of those things where like everything that's happened since The Sopranos happened in part because of The Sopranos. And so like it's just part of that. And I think it's honestly the only way they ever could have ended it. So without spoiling it, I think it's like a lot of things I'm like, it was that long ago. If it gets spoiled for you, it's your own fault if you haven't watched it yet. But as far as that goes, like you probably know even if you don't know because it's referenced so much culturally.
It is.
Yeah.
But like, no, I think it's great. I think I also like think it's the only way you ever could end it. It doesn't give me goosebumps or anything. But I think that it was the perfect way to do that. And, you know, it did make me, oh my God. What's the name of the Journey song? I'm crazy. I almost said Hooked on a Feeling. That's by Blue Suede.
Oh, see, now I'm forgetting it.
Streetlights, people, whoa, whoa. It's crazy that I'm forgetting the name of the song, so one of you have to say it to me.
Don't Stop Believing.
Yeah, Don't Stop Believing. Oh my
yes.
God. You can
He
tell.
sits down at the jukebox.
It's 10:23 p.m. everyone. But the thing about Don't Stop Believing is that scene took it out of songs that triggered my fight or flight, and brought it back into songs I can tolerate.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Full circle moment.
Thank you, bestie. I
Yes.
appreciate the question. That was
Yes.
fun.
Well, we
It's
actually aren't seeing Charlie anymore because we now have another question
I
from
know,
Prade,
it's kind of like a
from our
weird
technical
mirror.
director.
I just
Dylan.
kind of like keep looking over there and being like, "What's up, everybody?" And I
Yeah.
can't actually see anyone, but I'm like, "You can see me, and I want you,
You
to
can
feel
see the reflection of
appreciated."
ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll set up mirrors next time, so it's just like each angle you see me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dylan.
Also,
Please.
Welcome back,
do we
Dylan.
like The Wire in the room?
So I haven't watched it yet.
Okay, that needs to be on the list.
It is on the
I
list.
just want to point that out.
It's just like feels like an investment.
I
I'm
was
watching,
looking for a wire in our room.
Oh,
I was
that's
like-
funny.
you just see Idris Elba from the.
I'm watching all of The Simpsons right now, and so it's gonna take me a bit to get to The Wire.
So you can
Right.
see what's going to be happening in the future, right?
Yeah,
Right.
I'm on, dude. Oh my God, I watched an episode last night that was basically this past election. It was crazy, but anyway, Anyway, what were you gonna say, Dylan?
So, yeah, I heard like HBO shows. I'm like, you guys have to know. But for a music related question,
True.
obviously you've been a part of like a bunch of different shows in like any capacity. But what would you say is like your favorite memory or the favorite show you've been a part of?
Oh my God, I always say my favorite show I ever booked because it was like it felt like the beginning of what the when Live Room is cooking, when it's like really in its good swing, because we always go like everything in life goes through phases.
Oh, yeah.
But then there's like string of shows that are like this is what we're doing and this is like what the pinnacle of this thing is. And the first show that ever felt like when we're really in that, what it feels like was this show that I did at Amy's Place. It was April 15th of 2022. It was with my old band Breakfast Beers and then my best friends Free Casino. It was for their album release, which they like always like, it's like that thing where like they don't see that album as their baby. Like they're like, they know all of the things about it that they don't like. And like,
Yeah.
it's also like
Yeah.
they recorded it at a particular time. And so then you connected to the personal things you're going through when you were recording it probably. I don't know that, just like vibes and like stuff like that. And like, and I've had that relationship with music I've written before. I think any musician probably does to some extent. But I love that album. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. Beggar's Pitch by Free Casino. You should listen to it. Not just because I love them. And I do love them as people, and I have a lot of positive memories with that music. But I just think it is like one of the best math rock albums of the past 10 years. So they were on that bill, and then Muddle was on that bill, and it ended up being Spud Boy's last show as well. And I didn't know that. I was just like booking a gig with people I was friends with. And then it became a heater on accident. And it was like a super packed show that we really didn't expect. It wasn't like for anything. It was just fun. And I think that's the best stuff in the scene.
Yeah.
I think it's great when we're like raising money for stuff or it's for a holiday or something. But when it's just like people got together because they wanted to have a good time and like support each other, I think that's awesome. So that was one. And then Dayfest 2 last year was a banger. It was such a great community experience. I had a great time. It was another pinnacle of what Live Room could be. That Here's Collective show that we did in June, we had the Pride Center in Buffalo, had STI testing van out front, and they told us that they had the most people get tested to find out their status that they had like all of Pride Month at that show.
Wow.
And I had been cooking with them. I was like, and this is like the whole point of why I do what I do, is it's like there are so many people who you are not reaching, who are like, most of the trans women I know are in the punk scene, and they don't go to gay bars. They aren't in the places where you're trying to give them resources. They are at DIY punk shows at Amy's. They're at places that are not rainbow flags in the front window. And so you have, and you just like, and that's the difference between like being in your community and knowing your community. And that show was one of those times where I like knew that the thing that we were doing could really work. I also won't touch on it for too long because I will just start ranting about the police and the prison industrial complex. But it wasn't a show. And it was like a traumatic experience in a lot of ways, and I still talk about it in therapy, slay. But the UB protests for Palestine back in May, it ended, like a lot of folks locally might know about how that ended up with the cops' involvement and stuff, and it was horrible. Luckily, like everyone survived it. But the point I wanted to make was just that was also one of the times, like from not a musical standpoint, but just like in a community standpoint, there were a lot more police officers than there were people. And then we posted about it in Lav Room, and the numbers tripled in like 30 minutes because our community knew each other. They had met each other at shows. They knew who their neighbors were, even if they weren't of the same background as each other, if they were different ages. And that's the thing about the punk scene, is it's so intersectional, and the music scene in general is that it's a shared thing that people have, even if they're different from each other. Sorry, I get emotional when I talk about this. And so when all of those people came into that space, when they knew it was on the line, and it was the physical and emotional safety in the bodies of Black and brown students, they showed up.
Absolutely.
Because they knew each other. They knew that there was an investment there. They cared about each other, and they did that because they had a good time together at a time before that. And that made it really clear to me that what we're doing is working, and that it was important. And so that's why we keep doing it even when it's hard, is because there's going to be times in life and times in our community where stuff is really hard and we have to be there for each other when we don't even expect it. That has nothing to do with music, with doing drag, with doing like all of the poetry readings, all of the different stuff we do at Lav Room, where it's just about the community supporting community. And that was one of those moments where it really worked that way. So I hope that still answers your question, Dylan. But those were like 4 big moments in the past couple of years that really stood out to me.
Yeah. And I'll say for sure as well, just to show appreciation for that too, that was how your account was even how I found out about that at all, and was getting updates and everything like that. And it was something where it was like, even if it is something that's like physically or geographically far away from me, it's still so important to hear about it and get that outreach, and having that there was, really important in that time.
It was a scary day. And I also just need to I really want to acknowledge the fact that I did not witness the worst of that day, probably, and I did not experience it. I did not get arrested. I am a white person. I did not have nearly as much of a traumatic experience as other people did that day, and I'm hoping that it resulted in some good came out of it. And I think some did. I think that it opened a lot of people's eyes to what was going on in their own community. It's really easy to say, well, that's all stuff that's happening someplace else.
Yeah.
It doesn't impact the people I know. So much of stuff that I experience on a regular basis as a white trans woman, and I want to emphasize, as a white trans woman of non-binary experience, my experience is not the same as somebody where all that stuff is the same about them, except they're a person of color. But still, I do face harassment on a regular basis, online, in person. I get assaulted fairly regularly, if I'm being 100% honest. But something that I've recognized is that there are a lot of people in the music scene where I'm the only trans person they know. And so I do feel a certain level of responsibility to let them know what I experience, and also, so I be honest about things like that, right now, but also making sure that they know that we're people with families, people who love us, people who experience hard things, good things. We laugh, we cry the same as you. We stress out about money. We're not weird. We're not some foreign object, we're human beings, and we're the same as everybody else. And we're folks who exist in your community. And you know, and that's true of like anyone of any marginalized background or who is historically oppressed in some kind of way, intersectionally or otherwise. And so like, you know, to bring it all back, like moments like that day reminded me of why we do what we do. And other days like it, we helped organize a march for Next Benedict, who is a non-binary Indigenous teenager who was bullied to the point of taking their own life because of their non-binary and trans identity back last year. And we did a really successful protest where like we were only scheduled to do 2 hours. We were there for 5 because people just kept talking about their experiences to each other. And I felt like there was a lot of strength in that. And again, it was like all of the cis people who were there were people I knew through Lavroom. And I know a lot of them, just like, no tea, no shade, but based on background, like I know that probably if and this isn't like putting it on us, but like if they hadn't been in a space that was intentionally inclusive for everyone, that was centered on queerness, but also welcomed them in and said, this isn't about you right now, but we still want you here, I don't know if they would have been there that day. And I don't know if they would be doing the work that they've done since then. And so I hope they were, but I don't know that. And so I think it's so important to remember that as we move forward, that we want to paint as wide of a brush as we can, as long as we're doing it safely, and that we don't ever want to exclude anyone from any space because of who they are. We want to keep stuff safe, and like actions can make it so that you need to be excluded from a space. But who you are never should, because we are stronger together than we are apart. And like the work that we've done in the past year has made that really clear to me. So sorry that that's less fun than your question was initially, Dylan, but
it's important to be said,
you guys
though.
asking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I always like the personal is so political for me, and art and politics will never not be the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Largely because of the fact, and I think that like you folks probably experienced this too, is like when I was a cis guy, that wasn't true for me. And then I became a trans woman, like in the world. I guess I was always a trans woman, but like that became part of my identity. And then those two things could never not be together because the world has done that to me. And so it's not like I'm like rubbing it in anyone's face, but that's just what's happened. And so I'm going to live my best queer life, whether you like it or not. I'm not freaking going anywhere, and you can deal with it. But it's also just that like making it an example for other folks that you can do that too.
Absolutely.
And that all goes back to like part of my worldview where like we are all entitled to a better world than what we got right now. And let's keep doing that. And like, let's also like, you know, cover Nirvana songs while we do it. But like, you know, it's all part of the thing. So
As you should.
yeah.
Do you have anything else that you would like to share or promote that's going on in the future?
Oh, totally. Yeah. So, sorry, I'm just like braining.
No, you're good.
Besides following the Lavender account on
in general,
Instagram.
like if you want to know what's going on with Lavender Room, please follow Lavender Room NY on Instagram. No, I appreciate the plug. I needed it.
Yeah.
I'm tired. And so
Fair.
like, yeah, follow us, see what we're up to. In the next few weeks, since we're recording this, I don't know how much of it will be out, but we're doing a huge push at being more transparent about how we do our mutual aid work, and also what the look of that is, and like what the goals are, and trying to get folks more involved. We're doing a lot more volunteer outreach and organizing. We're going to be putting out applications you can submit for our organizing team. Basically, do you want like a part-time to full-time job that pays nothing except like you get to hang out with cool people and do meaningful work in community, and you can put it on your resume and maybe someone will care. And you'll have a cool title. I made up a bunch of cool titles. But so we're going to be doing a lot of that stuff in the next few weeks. So do check that out. There, at the time of this coming out, there should be 2 shows announced. One is on December 7th. It's at Milky's Elmwood Lounge in Buffalo, and it's going to be a holiday showcase with a bunch of great folks who've worked with Live Room in the past. So that should be a lot of fun. And then there's going to be our 3rd anniversary show, Theyfest 98.3.
Awesome.
It's going to be at Amy's Place on December 14th. There's like a whole bunch of bands and artists from all over the place. A lot of them are not from Buffalo, so please come out and support. They're folks that we've worked with before and that we love, but might not have as much pull locally. So we're running on that Lav Room cred once again. So I would love to see folks there. There's a lot of stuff going on that day, but even if you can come hang out, it's from I think doors are at 3, and then we're going till we're done. So
Awesome.
And that one is all ages, right?
that shows all ages. So no matter who you are or wherever you're on life's journey, you are welcome here. Please come. We want to hang out. It's just to celebrate art and community, being gay, doing not crime, and
Another time.
yeah, another time,
Yes.
and just like to hang out and see each other. The theme is category is Pride X Halloween, so whatever that means to you, dress like that. So it's like if it's like whatever character you wanted to be for Halloween, and also they're going to a Pride parade, or if it's like this character's kind of gay and this is why I think why, whatever that means to you, you can do that.
Pull up
That's
as
the vibe.
Tony Soprano.
Yeah, no, well, so that happened last year. Yeah, Bugcatcher came as the Sopranos. Half of them came as the Sopranos, and no, it was Free Casino came as the Sopranos, except for the people who were in the overlap. In the first set they played when they were in Bugcatcher, they came as Over the Garden Wall, which like another two secretly gay things holding hands. But yeah, so Dave Fest is coming up. Would really love to see folks there. It's the most fun we get to have all year long. And it'll be really cool. And yeah, just keep an eye out on what we're doing. I do photography at lavcam_ on Instagram. I didn't even talk about it, but Lavender Press is a thing that we do where we put out free zines that folks in the community make, or like we find on the internet and just put out at shows. There's always community resources at Lavroom shows to try and connect you to resources for food, housing. There's usually like a bunch of condoms and lube out if you want to taste test the lube because it is flavored. You can do that. And there's always like free zines. If you're somebody who makes zines and wants to send me a PDF, you can send it to me on Instagram. I'll print it out and put it out for people for free. We just want to connect people to each other and to art. So I really thank you guys for having me. This has been such a blast. I love doing stuff like this, and you're great at it. So
Thank you.
yeah, thanks for all of the work that you do, and I'm honored that you asked me to do it. So
Thank you so much.
Much love.
likewise.
Well, I think that concludes another episode of the Local Lowdown. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really, really been a pleasure.
Yes. And thank you for listening to the Local Lowdown on WCVF 88.9 The Voice and WDVL 89.5 The Inferno. We will catch you next semester, same time.
Same place.
Bye.